Hello and welcome to another Movie Boozer Pubcast. This is Sharch Week 4, and this week we are doing a return. We're going back to the well of talking dog movies. So
Which is
Hawk,
for some reason a tradition of this feature.
I think it is a tradition because there's so many of them, and they're all so surreally strange, and it's a subgenre of film that I've never quite understood, and yet you can't get away from them. And I don't know. Point being, we're gonna next year we might change it to talking animals just to expand that well even bigger.
Right.
But that said, we're gonna go ahead and talk. First of all, we're gonna jump right into our best friend, man's best friend, or a director's best friend. Robert Vince's Pup Star, the
A
first.
talking puppy's best friend.
Yes, a talking puppy. I mean, he's keeping them employed, that's for sure.
He understands them, I think, more than any other director does.
Yeah, I don't think any other filmmaker out there understands talking dogs better.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. So he's our favorite Canadian filmmaker of dog movies, and the plot of Pup Star, which I mean, in previous years we've talked about the sequels. We did Pup Star 2 in our first recording, and then in our second year of Shituary, we talked about Pup Star World Tour. So now we're talking the original, the classic.
When we first did this, I think the first one we watched was called Pup Star Better Together.
Yes.
It didn't really, for some reason, didn't register to either of us that the letter 2 in the subtitle Better Together, we didn't really register that was a sequel.
I can't say for.
Well, we were watching it and they're like, it feels like we don't have all the information that we need.
I feel like I might have even known that it was a sequel, but didn't care. But I don't know. It was too long ago for me to even speculate.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't really care. I mean, now we've seen the entire series.
Does it matter that we watch these out of order?
As long as we've seen them all, no.
Yeah. And so we know the whole cinematic universe, the Pup Star universe, which, by the way, this movie confirms, because one question we've had on our minds since we watched the first two, because it's something that's never, ever brought up, is the fact that dogs talk and humans hear them.
I mean, they kind of implied it because the pups are on a singing show.
They imply it, but it's never acknowledged that that's a thing. It's like the humans don't. The humans are just used to it at that point.
Yeah, that's true.
And the opening sequence in this film straight up says basically that. I mean, basically, don't they? They pretty much imply that either evolution or genetic experimentation has resulted in talking dogs.
I think it was evolution, but aren't those
aren't
those a brand of dog treat?
Yeah, it's like a dog treat.
Literal drugs in this movie.
Yeah, so these dogs are fed drugs that makes them sentient, and I guess now they have human rights because they have their own TV shows, and some of them have jobs and stuff that they presumably get paid to do.
Right.
And yet they're still okay with being owned and having masters, which is interesting. I'm not going to go into the ramifications of this because we got to tell the story of Tiny, the Yorkshire Terrier.
Yes, who is disgustingly adorable.
Yeah.
So,
well, it one of the Buddies movies, I forget which one, featured a tiny Yorkshire Terrier. I think it was technically also called Tiny, if I'm not mistaken. But also, yeah, and I think that was what inspired to make an entire series of films based on this one. In fact, I think it was Santa Buddies.
Probably.
I'm looking that up as we speak. So why don't you relate the plot of Pup Star while I'm looking this up?
So let's see. Okay, so Pup Star, I watch all of these in much closer proximity to each other than I did any other week this month in terms of the movies in the list. So they all kind of blur together a tiny bit. Pubstar does feature the same villains as the rest of the series, which is a dog catcher named Roland, and then a dog bounty hunter, not Dog the Bounty Hunter, but a bounty hunter named Dog.
Named
bounty
Kano.
Hunter,
like right out of Mortal Kombat. Kano.
Yeah, Kano, as in canine, because it's funny, who is a bounty hunter. And the implications of that are really extreme because he's also missing an eye, and it's implied that he lost his eye to another character, a dog character. And I'm actually drawing a total blank on the specifics of this plot. I do know that Tiny gets dog napped by Roland, and
so Tiny has just won the competition, Pupstar.
The singing, okay, yeah, that's right.
And through a series of, I basically there's some question as to whether they're going to be able to drive Tiny all the way to New York to compete in the final competition. And through a series of weird circumstances, Tiny ends up getting kidnapped by this dog catcher, this dopey ass dog catcher who is, definitely the supervillain / moron of the series.
Yes.
Who is behind pretty much all the bad things that happen. And it turns out he's running, he's basically Sam Rockwell from Seven Psychopaths. He kidnaps dogs from owners and holds them for ransom. And basically when he sees someone offering up a reward, he tries to take them in. But if those dogs are kept for too long, he euthanizes them. And they straight up, I mean, they never say straight up euthanizing, but the implication is there.
He's like, Roland's like, oh, it's almost 30-day mark, and you know what that means. And then all the dogs kind of whine, and it's like, oh, that means death, doesn't it?
That means this has happened before.
Yes, and and Roland is really excited.
Yes, like he plays his piano and has a whole party, a whole story. Like song behind how evil, like how much he loves to do. By the way, I'm sorry to, you know what? No, I'll save this reveal. I have a reveal coming up here. But so Tiny gets away and he escapes along with this this kind of what do you call it? A grizzled old veteran dog who kind of is like a super hobo, and the two go hoboing across the country in order for Tiny to get to his her, I guess, New York show. And meanwhile, they stop in quirky places like New Orleans and meet a blues singing dog, which is an interesting sequence.
Yeah, that was weird. That was very strange. Like all these dogs have specific personalities that play to known singers, and I believe many of them are even voiced by popular singers as well.
Well, it's worth noting Tiny is voiced by Caitlin Marr, who was one of those sing competition kids. He was on America's Got Talent because she was this very young kid who I think at like 8 years old or something, or like went on and did this, famous singing thing. Yeah. She's only 15 now. So this and the first Pupstar came out in
2016.
Oh, and by the way, it was Santa Buddies, and that came out in 2009, and it was Caitlin Marr voicing Tiny then. So, yeah, she was young. Anyway, point being that meanwhile, her Tiny's owners are trying to find her, and so they go on their own road trip, and they pick up all of these other dogs. They wind up going to the dog catcher. And they along the way, they very conveniently find an owner for all of these other dogs.
Right.
Meanwhile, the dog catcher goes to Kano, and this is what I want to bring up. If you remember, in Mortal Kombat, Kano was missing an eye.
Yeah, he has like a laser eye.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Kano's missing an eye, and Dog Kano is missing an eye. That can't be a coincidence.
Is Dog Kano voiced by the guy? No, that's impossible. He's not voiced.
that would be amazing. Like, if it was the dude from Mortal Kombat the movie or something. I'm actually
Australian.
Oh
in the
yeah,
movie, in Mortal Kombat the movie, he was Australian.
yeah. He's a Japanese-born American according to the Mortal Kombat mythos.
Yeah, the Mortal Kombat movies are a little laissez-faire with the character adaptations. Let's just say.
Yeah, I'm looking to see if it gives any if there's any dog references at all in the Kano biography here, just because.
Kano Mortal Kombat?
Yeah.
Probably not. I just think I'm guessing that I would bet that Kano is supposed to be a wordplay on canine, and they just gave him an eye patch just because, and nobody made the connection to Mortal Kombat.
I'm convinced that Robert Vince knew that adults would watch this movie, and the adults of this generation would be the adults who grew up on Mortal Kombat.
Maybe.
Robert Vince, he is a schlocky straight to video director, but he has an attention to detail that many of these others do not have.
This is true. I really do. We really got to get in touch with him and see what we can.
We need to get an interview with Robert Vince.
We really do.
I will see if there's any human way of pursuing that, because that would be awesome. Anyway, with that said, there's really not much else to the plot. Basically, Tiny makes it to the competition, and actually there is. It turns out that the dog that Tiny's been running with, the one who's sort of been, teaching her the ways of the road, is a country singing dog. And it turns out that the current Pubstar reigning champion has stolen all of his songs.
That's right. Yeah.
And so they make it there. She wins the competition and proves that the one dog was also, a good singer all along. So so that happens.
Yeah, there's not much to Pubstar. It's
a road movie.
Yeah, it's fine. Although I gotta say that the lyric "like a rolling bone" really didn't ever get old for me.
Yes, it's
repeated ad nauseum in the last stretch of the movie, and it's just so stupid.
It is, and yet I can't help but admire it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all I've got to say on that one. There was a pretty funny hippie dog.
Oh yeah, well, and of course we can't not mention the stereotypes, because these movies have spectacular stereotypes in dog form. Ziggy Marley voices Dog Gnarly, the Rastafarian dog.
Yeah,
and it is everything you would expect. In fact, I think Dog Gnarly made an appearance in Beach Bum, which we'll be talking about in the next Pubcast.
I like how this movie's stereotypes feel like a decade old.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Like Latina maid who's like, "Oh, Mr. Steven," and like all that, everything that would come with the Latina maid stereotype.
Yeah, now I know for making a kids movie, you do need to have much more broad depictions of characters so that kids can appreciate things. They appreciate things that are more cartoony, and so it makes sense to push the characterization a little further. But I'm also not going to censure this movie for its stereotypes, because it's almost sweetly ignorant of the fact that might offend people. And I don't want to be the white dude here who says I'm offended for you.
Right.
I'll let other people make that decision when they watch the movie.
It's kind of one of those ones where it's not like malicious, but it's kind of like, oh, maybe we've moved past that.
Yeah, we might have, but maybe maybe these movies have to exist for us to move past it.
Well, we did kind of also mention that that live action children's movies specifically exist in this bubble where these stereotypes kind of never went away.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
you wouldn't see that kind of stereotype in anything not made by like Broken Lizard or something like that.
Right. Yeah, I think that I, you know what, I'm not I don't
I'm
have
not going to
anything.
dwell on it too much. I just thought it was interesting that you see that a lot, especially in these kids movies where
Right.
it's very, very simple stuff for the kids.
And we're going to get so much deeper into that with some of our next movies on our list.
Oh
So
yeah.
we'll go ahead and jump to Cats and Dogs: The Revenge of Kitty Galore, which um, this is watching piles. You know what? I mentioned Beach Bum earlier. That movie features a scene in which piles of money are burning on camera, and that's what watching this movie was like.
You said the
But
budget for this was like $80 million.
85 million.
It's
And
directed by Brad Payton, who made Rampage, Andreas, and Incarnate.
yeah,
And brief plug for Incarnate is one of my favorite shitty horror movies ever because it is just screamingly hilarious with how stupid it is.
yeah. Brad Payton only makes schlock. This was his first movie he directed. Second was Journey to the Mysterious Island, then San Andreas, Incarnate, and Rampage. It turns out that, and with the exception of Incarnate, all of his movies have been huge box office successes. Incarnate didn't do terrible, but it's hard. You couldn't call it, explosive.
My
But
understanding was that Incarnate was intended as like a TV pilot to kick off a TV show, and then when it wasn't picked up, they kind of just did reshoots and stretched out into feature length.
by the way, Brad Payton's Canadian. Robert Vince is Canadian. What is it with Canadian directors and talking dogs?
They probably only make money in Canada.
uh, maybe, or maybe there's some sort of a weird requirement that I don't know. I wonder if Brad Payton made Cats and Dogs: The Revenge of Kitty Galore as like a salute to his fellow talking animal Canadian brethren. Either way, the plot of Cats and Dogs: The Revenge of Kitty Galore is, you know, Johnny English, James Bondish,
I mean,
Spy
it's like you
Hard.
saw the first Cats and Dogs, right?
No, I never did.
Oh wow. Okay, so it's the same. The two movies have the same kind of similar plot structure.
By the way, this movie came out 9 years after the first one. There was such an outcry for a sequel to the first,
And it
right?
has like one of the characters like so. Both movies involve the spy agencies of cats and spy agencies of dogs, and the cat agency devises some kind of plan to make humans like dogs less so that cats can reign supreme. In the first movie, it was to make all humans allergic to dogs. In this one, it was to emit a sound that makes all dogs go berserk and be imprisoned.
Mm.
Which the first movie, okay, so the first movie has merit because the villain is Mr. Tinkles, a fuzzy white cat, and then he's in a extended Hannibal Lecter spoof in this movie, which was very poorly done. And in the first movie, this cat he integrates with the plot line of the main characters because the main human character's dead, and there are actually major human characters in the first movie, like, that's the main storyline. The main character's dad in the first one is played by Jeff Goldblum, who is a scientist trying to devise a cure for allergies. And so Mr. Tinkles is going to weaponize his research into, making people allergic to dogs. So there's a modicum of thought to the science, quote unquote, of the first movie. This one is just garbage.
Yeah. I can't speak to the first movie, but I can speak to the fact that as much money as went into this, they seem to focus an awful lot on just really, really used spy movie tropes and spy movie jokes that it reminds me a lot of Show Dogs, which stole so many detective movie tropes that and drove them just into the ground.
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah, and also, by the way, both Show Dogs and this movie feature smart talking pigeons.
Yes, I was troubled by that as well.
Yeah, I wonder. Once again, what's the deal? Why are pigeons always ethnic, smart talking characters?
I don't know. I think it's just a thing that people just go along with. They're like, well, I'm not going to waste my time reinventing the talking pigeon character for a fucking dog movie, right?
Yeah. Also, Chris O'Donnell is in this movie.
For not very much time.
Yeah.
Chris O'Donnell, as a reminder, was Robin in Batman and Robin and Batman Forever.
And then he had that one romantic comedy where like thousands of brides chased him, and that was like the last starring role he had. You don't remember that?
No. I probably would if you told me the title.
The Bachelor, I think.
That was the name of the movie?
Yes.
I don't think I ever saw that then.
I saw it in theaters because I was, preteen, and I wanted to go to the movies, and I didn't care what.
Oh, yeah. I did that with Hairspray.
Yeah, so it came out in 1999, and the plot of the movie, listen to this. Okay, Jimmy Shannon, played by Chris O'Donnell, wants to be a bachelor forever. He considers himself a wild Mustang, free and never tied down. However, after 3 years, he proposes to his girlfriend in the most romantic restaurant in town, but spoils the occasion with his crudity. And this keeps going, but I'm just going to say that like a relative of his dies and leaves him $100 million, but only if he's married by his 30th birthday.
Okay.
And it's basically Chris O'Donnell and his friend Artie Lang trying to find a wife for him. And the thing that the trailers pushed was this scene where like thousands of women dressed in bridal costumes chase him down the street because Artie Lang put like a ad in the paper that he needed to get married to get $100 million. So
that sounds terrible.
This movie is why romantic comedies are basically dead as an art form. There are good romantic comedies, don't get me wrong. Just movies like this are why people don't want to make them. And they're also it's also worth noting. I will say one other thing about the movie The Bachelor. This movie is one of those movies that it's a career killer because I'm pretty sure Chris O'Donnell never had a starring role after that.
I mean, I know why I didn't see it because even in the Batman movies, I was like, I don't really like this Chris O'Donnell guy. He kind of sucks.
Oh, you know what? He appeared in Vertical Limit after that.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, interestingly, that was the end. But, yeah, I'm just going to go out. But the thing is, Vertical Limit's it's not a great movie, but it's at least got some thrills. I'm going to say The Bachelor is the movie that killed his career.
I can imagine, yeah.
Batman and Robin didn't help. To wit, by the way, he was nominated for a Razzie for Worst Screen Couple with George Clooney.
I remember that.
Oh, makes so much sense.
But as far as cats and dogs too, so in another movie that we're going to discuss, I mentioned the distracting lack of cohesion in the dog characters and how they moved in relation to their lines. I mean, they just don't seem very well trained. And in this movie, it's less of an issue only because 80% of the dogs are CGI.
Yeah.
And that's really problematic because they move in ways that no animal would. Like they bounce around on their hind legs and fling weapons around and wear outfits and make really bizarre facial expressions. And it's incredibly alienating as a viewer to try to watch these characters on screen and see them as characters. But
at least we got to see Joey Pants play a Chihuahua.
Yeah, I guess at least we did.
By the way, I said that without without any sense of sarcasm, right? Yeah. J.K. Simmons is one of the friggin' dogs in this. The cast, You've got Roger Moore, Wallace Shawn, Sean Hayes, Neil Patrick Harris, Phil LaMarr, J.K. Simmons, Jeff Bennett, so many famous names, all voicing dogs and collecting their paycheck.
I will say that Sean Hayes, in his really brief cameo as Mr. Tinkles, the white cat, was probably the best part. Even though that was the worst part because of its Hannibal Lecter cameo, he was also the voice actor that was clearly having the most fun with his lines.
Yeah, I would say that.
And which he was the same way in the first Cats and Dogs. He when he voiced the character, where he was just really wild and just pretty much like making the best of a bad situation, unlike some other people in this movie and others.
Wallace Shawn was entertaining. Wallace Shawn.
Which one was he?
Well, do you know who Wallace Shawn is, first of all?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he was the... Okay, so you remember the scene where the one cat locks them in a room with like the sand, not the sand, the litter starts filling up the room?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was him. He was the cat that had the most fucked up CGI that looked like his mouth was a quivering anus.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the weirdest. I don't know what they were thinking with that CG.
I almost thought Kitty Galore was worse though in terms of CG.
Yeah, I mean that could also just. I mean,
so this movie isn't really. It has a plot, but nothing happens. Like it's like, oh, Kitty Galore wants to, make this sound that makes dogs go berserk, and then the movie is just like 90 minutes of just things happening, like action scene and goofy stuff and slapstick and pratfalls, and then the climax, and then that's it.
Yeah.
There's not really any character development. I mean, they're like, the main character doesn't follow orders, and so he's a bad dog, and he's a bad police officer, and he learns to follow orders. And it's like, and this cat hates water, and of course she's probably going to have to conquer her fear of water to save the main character, which of course she does. But there's not really a plot. There's not a 3-act structure. It's just kind of shit just happens, and then the movie ends, which is my least favorite kind of movie.
Yeah,
it's not done right.
Interestingly, though, this movie came out at the same time or around the same time as the next movie that we have on our discussion, which is Marmaduke.
Hold on. I want to say one more thing about Cats and Dogs, too.
All right, go ahead.
Is that Kitty Galore's satellite weapon is on top of one of those whirligig swing rides at the amusement park?
Yeah.
And during the entire climax, where the thing is like transforming and firing a laser, and there's fighting happen on top of it, the ride is still going, and people are still having fun riding the ride.
Well, yeah, because people don't notice shit.
And then the fucking thing blows up, and still nobody notices anything.
Oh, there should have been so many deaths.
So many deaths. The other thing that I thought was really... There are a couple things that I've got to respect Brad Payton for in this movie, that like a couple of like really random, goofy things. Like when they're going to infiltrate the theme park, a mascot comes out, like a big bear mascot with a big head, and he sits down, pulls out a newspaper, and scratches his head, which was so stupid because obviously a guy wearing a mascot head wouldn't feel it if he scratched the outside of the mascot head.
Yeah.
But he still does it. Like it was kind of like one of those.
Well, you're giving credit to Brad Payton. That could have been the actor in the costume who thought, wouldn't that be stupid? And I wonder if anyone will stop me.
That too. Although I don't know, Brad Payton is a director that I am still not quite sure on, because Incarnate was bizarre. Like you haven't seen Incarnate, have you?
I have not. No.
But you're familiar with the premise.
No.
Okay, so this is why I kind of think that Brad Payton might kind of be in on the joke sometimes, is that Incarnate is a horror movie about, it stars Aaron Eckhart. He is a wheelchair-bound exorcist. When there's something that needs to be exorcised, he goes to their house, they plug his wheelchair into this machine, which then plugs into the person being possessed, and he goes into their head Inception style and fights the demon hand-to-hand to throw them out of a window, which then exorcises the person.
That sounds like a Bruce Lee movie or something.
When I say hand to hand, they kind of just punch each other a couple times and roll about.
That would be an amazing like martial arts movie, though. Wouldn't it?
Super dope martial arts movie, but as a concept, it's kind of so dumb. It's kind of awesome. The movie is not nearly as cool as it sounds, but I think Brad Payton might have a little bit of a sense of humor about what he makes. But Obviously they didn't shine through entirely on Cats and Dogs 2 because it's a garbage movie that's not very funny at all, except for a couple of things. But that's enough.
Yeah, that's enough about Cats and
yeah.
Dogs, and let's get Gareth Evans on the phone and tell him about that idea.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Oh, even better. Speaking of what if you had to go inside of the brain and not only like is it like a single martial arts combat thing? What if it's like every single brain is like its own little building you have to infiltrate, like the Raid?
Oh, the possibilities of things that will never happen.
Yeah. So
speaking,
what's that?
You did mention Marmaduke, and the funny thing about Marmaduke is that the director, Tom Day, directed a martial arts movie called Shanghai Noon.
Oh, he did. You're right. And I don't hate Shanghai Noon.
I mean, I don't think anybody hates or loves Shanghai Noon. They just kind of acknowledge that it's a movie that exists.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing. It's not Shanghai Nights.
It is not.
He also... Wait a second.
He did not do Shanghai Nights. I think Shanghai Nights was
no, he didn't.
It was the Rush Hour guy, right?
Oh my god, he directed. Okay, so I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that. But Tom Day did direct several episodes of the 2018 Snatch TV series.
Yeah,
you remember the one they tried to do that?
I do. I didn't watch it, but I know.
Yeah.
Okay, so Shanghai Nights is actually David Dobkin, which is just astronomically worse than the other guy whose name.
But interestingly, Shanghai Nights is not that much worse than Noon. They're both about the same level of mediocrity.
Yes.
Although I'll give them a cut above Rush Hour for creativity, because at least the concept is a little bit more interesting than just dull cop buddy movie.
Racist humor.
Yeah, they're both that way.
Yeah.
The only difference is set in the Old West, you can at least get away with it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, all of Jackie Chan's movies, the American ones, are basically... Isn't it hilarious how this Chinese person doesn't know anything about American culture?
Yeah, but then he proceeds to kick everyone's ass and prove that he's awesome.
Yes.
Which is why he's so... I mean, everyone loves Jackie Chan. Because
everyone.
He doesn't just kick people's ass. He kicks people's asses and makes you laugh while doing it.
Yeah. But so you know what doesn't make you laugh is Marmaduke.
Oh my god. This movie was...
terrible. I told you when I was watching it, this might be the worst movie of the month, but this might be the worst movie of the entire Shituary experience that we've done so far. Like, I don't remember specifically some of the other movies we've watched, but this is really up there in terms of the pain factor.
Some of those Medea movies were pretty bad, but you're right. This is not. This is a contender, and I think the worst part of it is just from the basic conception of the concept. There is no good idea in this. This is just a terrible idea. That also, by the way, I can't say I enjoy Marmaduke, the cartoon strip, because Marmaduke is one of those comic strips that's just still in newspapers because of its famous name. It, much like the Family Circus, it has not made a single person laugh in about 40 years. But one of the things I do know about Marmaduke, the comic strip, is Marmaduke never talks.
Yeah, I think how much better would this movie have been if it was just focused on the family first and foremost, and Marmaduke was just this dog they had that just keeps messing things up.
See, it would have at least put a challenge on the filmmakers to try to come up with a creative way to tell his story, and even, I'm not saying that they can't give him some slightly more anthropomorphic traits in order to to amp up the humor a bit, but if they'd done it without dialogue for the dog, it would have been more creative. Shit, it's not like it hasn't been done successfully before. Look at Benji.
Right, exactly. I don't know. I also need to point out that Owen Wilson is a terrible choice to voice Marmaduke. Just awful.
Yeah, and this was also that period where Owen Wilson was always being cast as the sly douchebag, and I mean, I know he does that well. Don't get me wrong, but it came out at that point where the sly douchebag character he was playing was starting to really drag on people.
Well, this was like 4 years after he was cast in Cars as Lightning McQueen, and I still don't think he was a very good choice for that either.
Yeah, I mean, he had a run here where he did this. He did How Do You Know, Lil Fokker's Hall Pass in Cars 2, and then the internship in Freebirds, and people were just, no, we're done with you. And then he did get Midnight in Paris in there and a few indies, and I've noticed that he's tried to stick more to indie stuff lately, with the occasional bigger budget movie like Zoolander 2.
Well, I learned on the Amazon X-ray feature, which is a really a kind of awesome feature. If you've ever used Amazon X-ray, it's when if you're watching Amazon on Amazon Prime and you mouse on your PC, at least, so as far as I know, you mouse over the screen, you get this overlay of like the cast as well as trivia.
Yeah.
Apparently, Owen Wilson really styles himself more as a writer and prefers doing that, and that's why he likes these indie movies. He just kind of keeps getting sucked into these bigger budget movies.
Yeah, and it's very true. I mean, I actually remember him saying, I think it was in one of the Wes Anderson movie. Actually, I think it's Bottle Rocket. I think in the commentary on Bottle Rocket, he straight up says that writing is his passion. Acting is just something that sort of happened out of necessity for when they made the Bottle Rocket short, and then they found out that, Wes Anderson just really liked his performance, so that's what got it going.
Right, yeah. He also co-wrote many of Wes Anderson's earlier scripts, like Rushmore and Bottle Rocket and a couple others.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's a thought. What if, instead of Owen Wilson, how much better would the movie be if Marmaduke was voiced by Michael Clark Duncan? Immediately better, I think.
Yeah, who, by the way, Michael Clark Duncan does have a voice role in Cats and Dogs, so that's very interesting that you mentioned that. But yeah, I think that would have been good, or like, honestly, just about anyone who's got a deep voice. I mean, shit, Sam Elliott shows up as a dog in this movie, and I think he could have been a good choice too. It would have been interesting to see him play a straight-up comedic character.
Yeah, that too. Maybe not the best for Marmaduke, but as like maybe a bigger supporting role than what he had.
Yeah.
So this movie is just agonizingly predictable. Down to the minutia of the plot.
Well, and the plot is so bad because so there's basically two parallel plots in this movie. You've got the human plot and the dog plot. The human plot is the worst. Basically, the human plot is the living eyebrows that that are Lee Pace has gotten a job in California, and he wants to move his kids and his family there, and he doesn't consult them on it, so they resent him for it, which I mentioned this when we were watching it the other night, which was how many teenage children do you know want to move back to Kansas after they've been to fucking Los Angeles, or not Los Angeles, San Francisco?
Only a movie that's poorly written could come up with something like that.
Yeah, that alone doesn't make sense. But so basically, he's got a job for a dog food company that does organic dog food. William H. Macy is the dog food, like organic dog food king, I guess.
Their dog food is so organic that he insists on walking. William H. Macy insists on walking through a dog park barefoot.
And that's how he does business. Apparently, he calls his office the dog park.
Yeah.
So
William H. Macy's character has this weird, like, his character is really compacted from what it could have been. Like, he loves dogs, and there's a lot of references that he loves dogs more than he loves his own wife.
Yes.
At one point, they're going to go on a boat, and he's like, "Oh, this is a weird thing, but my wife doesn't allow dogs on the boat. I think she's jealous. And later on, he wants to organize a meeting with the dad's character, played by Lee Pace, who we'll talk about in a minute. And when Lee Pace says, "No, I got to spend time with my family. We'll do it Monday," and William H. Macy looks profoundly disappointed and says, "All right, Monday, I guess."
Yeah, dogs come first, family second. Well, his character is alternately like evil boss stereotype and ideal boss stereotype, all wrapped up in one, and it changes from scene to scene. And I know that William H. Macy is, he's a hired gun actor who will appear in your movie to make money so that he can pay for his to bribe his children's way through education. But frankly, there's just no direction to his character at all. You can't get a beat on his motivation other than he just happens to. He's
a reason for the dad's motivation.
And damn it, he wants that PetSmart contract.
Petco.
Petco? Oh, sorry, it's where the pets go.
I think it's Petco. In any case, whether it's PetSmart or Petco, they say it like
if Petco is where the pets go, is PetSmart where the pets fart?
Petco is where the pets go because PetSmart is where the pets aren't.
I prefer pets to fart because it's
which happens twice in this movie.
Yeah, and by the way, I really should have inserted some crickets after that joke, but whatever. Yeah, so let's talk about the dog plot.
Marmaduke is okay. So this is where the movie also gets super predictable. It's like, oh gee, I wonder, even sarcastically to myself, I was like, I wonder if this girl dog who is friends with Marmaduke and helping Marmaduke get this lady dog that he likes, and Marmaduke's gonna get the lady dog and turn into a huge dick, and the lady dog is not what he thought he was gonna be. She was gonna be, and then at the end of the movie, he gets with the girl dog who was his friend at the beginning, and that's literally exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's. Oh shit! I'm sorry. I was reading through the voice credits. Fucking Todd Glass voices one of the Dobermans. What the hell?
Really? I recognize Kiefer Sutherland as the villain.
Yeah, Todd Glass was like, you know how there was the wimpier Doberman?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was him.
Wow, talk about 5 minutes of recording, if that.
Yeah, it's too bad. I dig Todd Glass as a comedian, so I really it's too bad he didn't get a bigger role.
Well, keep in mind too, this was during that era where every voice actor in a animated movie, especially for animals, was some kind of comedian.
Yeah, or celebrity or something.
Yeah, something like that. Or yeah.
I'm now looking through his filmography because I don't know that Todd Glass ever really does movies.
I don't think he does.
Like he appeared in a couple episodes of Louie, a bunch of random walk-on TV shows, but he was in. Okay, he's in a couple of really low-budget movies. He was in He was in an episode of Home Improvement and Married with Children. Okay, I need to hunt down those episodes because that is weird.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I derail our conversation of Marmaduke, but it's just that's a weird find. All right, go ahead.
It's just a painfully predictable movie. Like even the human plot, it's like even at the very beginning, I was like, I'm gonna guess that Marmaduke's gonna mess up the dad's contract, and then at the very end do something to save the contract, and everybody's happily ever after, and everybody loves Marmaduke all of a sudden.
Yeah, and I of course called the whole thing of Marmaduke suddenly starts to get cool among the cool dogs, and when he does that, he's going to betray his friends, and then his friends are going to take him back immediately.
It's basically a high school comedy, literally a high school comedy with dogs.
Yeah, in fact, there's even a point where they call him a teenage dog, which is odd because it is worth noting that Great Danes live to like 6 or 7 years old, so you can't have a teenage Great Dane.
I kind of hated the opening sequence where he's narrating, and it's like, I bet you probably think it's really. I can't do an Owen Wilson voice, but it's like talking about like being a tall, awkward kid in high school. And there's this kid walking through high school, and he's like literally 7.5 feet tall, and he gets picked on. Like that would ever happen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pick on an 8 foot tall kid in high school. Like, I don't think I wasn't 8 foot tall in high school, and I'm not now either. But
let me really quickly teach you there is a one word Owen Wilson impersonation that everyone can do. Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Hell, even that tortoise, if you've seen the video of the
I've
tortoise.
seen the video, yeah. So I want to talk about Lee Pace, who I noticed from the moment he was on screen that he looks dead inside. He is like wondering what he's gotten himself into. Like he hates being in this movie, and you can just see it in his eyes.
If I ever meet him in person, that would be my one question, would be, how upset were you during the filming of Marmaduke? Because you just do not look like you're enjoying the experience.
He really doesn't. Like it's like Bruce Willis looks disinterested when he's in his newer movies. Lee Pace, his eyes are just screaming, "Kill me!" And to a lesser extent, Judy Greer is the same way. I mean, she's trying a little bit more, but she's clearly frustrated that she's in this movie. Like everybody in this movie is like somebody off camera has guns on them. It's like, fucking act. We're doing this movie.
Yeah, I mean, Lee Pace, he put his brain into autopilot and just let his eyebrows take over. Because that's the only thing that's acting in this movie is his eyebrows.
Lee Pace, I mean, the dude's like 7 foot tall almost. He's like 6'4" or something like that, which is funny because first of all, in the movie The Book of Henry, he towers over Nicole Kidman. Like he's just a fucking unit compared to her when he's talking to her about how her son's gonna die.
Oh, you said unit. I thought you said eunuch for a second. I was like, what?
No, unit. Yeah, unit.
That is not.
In the climax of this movie, when Marmaduke is being swept away by a current, it's like, oh no, he's not going to get Marmaduke. It's like, oh, it's okay because 6'5" Lee Pace is going to reach out with his big ass gorilla arms and catch him before he dies. And there's no tension, which that's neither here nor there. But just in the way that scene was shot, there's no tension because obviously big ass Lee Pace is going to have no issues grabbing a CGI dog out of the water.
Yeah, that's true.
But at that point in the movie, I was already so frustrated that I was kind of just actively dunking on this movie. Because it's so easy. It's... what else? I think at one point I mentioned I was really tired when I watched this by the time it was over, because I watched this... I watched the second half of Cats and Dogs 2, this, and the next movie all in one sitting, like without any break.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so I was like, "This. If we're gonna end it on this, we're gonna end it and make it real." At the very end of this movie, Lee Pace and William H. Macy, they're like, "What if dogs could talk to each other?" And William H. Macy's like, basically, he's like, "Hey, don't be an asshole." And they're like, "Yeah, what if they could dance?" And they just kind of slowly look at each other, and then of course you have the requisite ending dog movie dance sequence where they're all getting up on their hind legs and basically the primary marketing gimmick for the movie back when it came out. And I remember it distinctly because I worked at a video store when it came out.
Yeah, it's worth noting that this is one of the few, I say live action with air quotes because there's so much CG in this, it's hard to call that live action. But
dogs, though.
Yeah, most animated films of this time period had the dance party sequence, and
right.
And it's the worst. It's never fun. It's always stupid, and it doesn't help that it was also a commercial for pet food in this case.
But I disagree on that last part because I think it does help that it's a pet food commercial, because after the dance sequence is over, it pans out and it turns out that was just a composite commercial made by Lee Pace's character. And so in universe, dogs don't actually dance. It was just a stupid idea that Lee Pace came up with for his product.
Do you think that was just written to explain how awful the CG was in the dance sequence?
I think it was written to explain why they were dancing. I think the CG was intentional. I think that was the best they could do at that point.
Because it's a commercial, so that's why it looks terrible.
Yeah, or something like that. I mean, yeah, that's possible. I do want to say I admire the restraint in making a cat character played by George Lopez not just a savagely obvious Mexican stereotype, except for the part where he's like, "Oh, I really like the guacamole." But that was the only, like, as far as I can remember, the only blatantly Hispanic stereotype in the entire movie in terms of that character. I would have expected for a movie that would cast George Lopez as a cat would just go whole hog on the Hispanic jokes, but it really didn't.
Considering when the movie came out, it could have been worse. They could have hired Carlos Mencia.
Yeah, that would have been terrible.
Yeah. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and move on because I think I'm Marmaduke'd out. I have nothing else to Marmaduke about. So let's return to the wonderful world of Robert Vince with last year's release, Puppy Star Christmas.
So immediately again, I did not take a break between Marmaduke and Puppy Star Christmas. And Puppy Star Christmas ended up being a wonderful palate cleanser and genuinely funny movie as something immediately following Marmaduke.
Yeah, I comparatively, this was probably the highlight of Sharch for me.
Yeah, I would agree because Robert Vince was pretty good in Pop Stars, but then with Puppy Star Christmas, he's really kind of honed his craft in terms of talking dogs and slapstick involving this series involves all the same characters for the most part. So he's really grown with these characters and developed, especially the bad guys, into a specific flavor of comedy and slapstick.
Yeah, it's like a traveling comedy troupe that just happens to be made up of questionably CG talking dogs.
Now, I do want to preface this before I just start, loving on this movie completely. It's still a bad movie, but it's a bad movie that is genuinely enjoyable in several ways.
Yeah, and I even hesitate to use the word bad because I will say it's schlock, and I think it's knowing schlock. And I would say that there's love and attention to detail in this that I'm going to straight up say that no, this isn't a good movie per se. Obviously, I wouldn't put this movie up for an Academy Award. But what I will say is that I'm certainly going to try to, when my nephew gets to the right age, I'm going to try to get him to watch it.
Yeah, you know what? I'll rescind my statement as well. It's not bad. It's just not for me. But I enjoyed what it did as schlock.
There's enough in this film for people of our age to watch that we can watch it and laugh and enjoy it without feeling, like what we're doing is essentially watching a crappy kids movie.
Well, there are some genuinely funny gags in this movie, like legitimately really funny bits.
Do you have a favorite you want to mention? It sounds like
probably one of my favorites is when Roland's the bad guy again with Kano, and he's got this ironically Mexican stereotype dog. And when they get to the North Pole, the Mexican stereotype dog spends a good 15 minutes as a frozen prop that Roland carries around.
Right.
It's obviously a fake dog, and it's just frozen. And it's at one point he's like, "I'm gonna do like Santa and go down the chimney." And then he starts to walk away, and he turns around, and is like, "Oh wait, here you go." And he sets down frozen dog, and then goes about his thing. Which that's so stupid, but it was like they went for it on that joke, and it wasn't just like a one-off. Oh, the dog's frozen when they get off the train. Isn't that funny how cold it is? Like they commit to that dog being a frozen prop for like a good 2 or 3 scenes,
complete with some ridiculous sound design. You have the chattering teeth, and the dog is also like vibrating, so it's like shaking like
and
crazy.
It's not like an obvious. It's practical. I think it's a practical effect. A mechanically moving mouth where it's like so cold.
Yeah, that I would agree that was probably one of the highlights. Another thing that I really enjoyed was something about the tood that Santa's deer have in this movie. His reindeer.
Yeah, I think probably when I laughed the hardest was Roland is talking to the reindeer, and I can't remember what line he says, but then Cupid is like, "Oh no, sorry, I just have resting flirty eyes," and she's like, "Bling bling bling," like the sound effect. He's like, "Oh yeah, Cupid, I get it." And she's got these like huge, she's got these beautiful huge eyes that are just like, but like classic animation flirty eyes from
Well, it is Disney. They just the CG people just pulled that up, and
it's re-upped on the asset. Yeah,
yeah, that was an asset that they've had for literally decades.
It was so immediately recognizable that was a pretty good joke.
Yeah, but the reindeer in this have like '90s style too. It was comical, right out of a friggin' Wheaties commercial or something. And I enjoyed that. And another thing I enjoyed there, one of my favorite characters who he wasn't in the first Pup Star, but I think he joined in either 2 or 3, is the actor is Reggie De Leon, who plays Shep, who is the basically he's the stereotype. He's the stereotypical flamboyant character who is just always on their side, and he's always with the puppies and taking care of them. And there's something about his character that is instantly recognizable every time he enters the room. I kind of adore stuff like that when you have these established characters that just invade movies, and he's essentially the same thing in everything he does, and it's always entertaining.
There's a certain warmth to Puppy Star Christmas from these recognizable characters, and like I really hate to admit that I enjoy how this movie or these movies follow the same cast of characters, but like this movie comes up, it's like, oh hey, it's Mr. Steven and the daughter and Tiny and her and him and like all these characters that you've seen in these movies, and none of them really have specific arcs, but they've got this kind of, they're recognizable, and it's like, hey, it's them again. Like
there's Reggae Dog again.
Yeah, exactly. So the movie's plot is that Tiny and PUP get married and they have kids, and then all of a sudden Kano and Roland want to steal Christmas, and it's from there it's basically the plot of the Santa Claus 3.
Yeah. except without the suck.
Without the suck, yeah. And without Martin Short.
Thank God. Martin Short post, I don't know, 2000, post like 1995 is just sad.
Yeah. I don't remember enjoying anything in the Santa Claus 3, but the Puppy Star Christmas has a lot to kind of giggle at and kind of feel good about. Like it's not good, like you said, but there's a certain sort of familiarity and warmth to it that makes it it makes it go down really easy.
A movie like this, like if this movie was released in a theater, I would probably go harder on it. But the fact is, this goes direct to Netflix, and you know what else went to direct to Netflix at the same time? The Christmas Chronicles,
which I enjoyed.
It, enjoyable though it was, it did feel a little bit more like like they had an agenda when they made that movie of, let's make a slightly more edgy kids Christmas movie.
I just feel like, the Christmas Chronicles is a movie that I wish I would have enjoyed more had it gone harder on some of the ideas that it played with.
Versus this movie is unabashedly what it is. It doesn't try to be anything else, and it's fine with what it is. It's happy and free, and it's fun, and it's got just charmingly low budget production design. I mean, that North Pole set is so corny and clearly
it's terrible.
Oh yeah, they had a small sound stage to work on, and they could have, they had the money to afford colorful backgrounds and populate it with like the elves, they didn't give any thought to the size of elves. Elves come in all shapes and sizes. But you know what they did have? They had the money to afford Danny Woodburn as the head elf.
Yes.
And you know what? Anyone who hires Danny Woodburn is okay with me. If you don't know, I was going to say, if you don't know who Danny Woodburn is, if you remember Mickey from Seinfeld, that's who you're talking about.
Oh yeah, he's in tons of stuff. He's a huge dwarfism advocate for dwarfism rights and stuff. He's in a lot of stuff. He's a good actor.
Oh yeah, I mean he's great and stuff, but he's also got an excellent sense of comic timing, and so it's a pleasure to see him appear in movies. And by the way, he is part of the Robert Vince Repertory Company because he was in fact, believe it or not, Santa Paws 2, the Santa Pups.
Mm-hmm.
He played the same character. So the Santa Paws movies are set within the same universe now.
Nice.
So, and by the way, Santa Paws is part of the Buddies universe, so it's official. The dogs in the Buddies movies, they can't hear those dogs talking. So what happened? Are the Buddies movies literally prequels? And somewhere in between the Buddies movies and the Pup Star movies, that dog treat came out that gave dogs the ability to talk, and now humanity is somehow totally okay with it. Can you imagine like the years and years of controversy that would spawn?
I trust that Robert Vince would have a way to write himself out of this conundrum had he been presented with it.
Does Robert Vince have like a gritty movie that takes place in between that explains that? Because if so, I want to see that. Like the gritty movie where humanity comes to terms with the fact that that man's best friend is now sentient.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Wow. Goddamn. I need to see this movie now.
So I love how Roland and Kano have their whole plan, and the other dog who steals songs. Nobody cares about him. Their whole plan is to steal Christmas, and basically Roland imprisons Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus in a candy cane prison.
Yeah.
He basically storms their house and is like, "Hey, Christmas is mine, bitch." And then he puts them in a candy cane cage and puts on the suit, and then he just starts growing a beard. And then they commercialize Christmas and then charge for shipping on gifts. And
there's a whole song about
a whole song, like a stage song, and it's great.
Yeah, and one of my favorite lines from the movie, I think I quoted this to you last night. Hold on, I'm trying to pull that up. Oh yeah, if your parents don't buy from Santa, they don't love you. Wow. Yeah. See, that's lines like that take thought. You didn't get something like that in Marmaduke.
You didn't. Now, of course, it is revealed that Roland is so bitter because he hates Santa because he never got the gift he wanted. And it turns out that he was a good kid in the orphanage. And then Santa brought him the gift he wanted, but the lady that ran the orphanage took all their gifts and kept giving them coal every year, which led Roland to be very bitter. Now, this doesn't explain why he loves killing dogs in the first Pup Star, but
yeah, well, I mean, actually think about this. What kind of an evil, heinous person would would not only steal the kid's presents, but then give them coal? That's clearly Roland learned from the best in terms of being just a horrible human being.
Yeah, she's not like, oh, Santa doesn't exist and he didn't bring you anything. He's like, no, he does and he hates you. Yeah,
it's sort of like have you ever seen the Christmas tree short? The animated special that's pretty infamous.
Maybe. What happens?
That's the one where it's this Canadian animated short where like these kids are in an orphanage and there's this evil woman who runs it named Mrs. Mavilda, who like steals from the orphans and takes all the money and gambles it and laughs about her losing all of the money gambling it.
Mrs. Mavilda?
Yes.
Who's her husband?
They never show her husband. If you've not seen this, by the way, that it is actually, you know what? You probably, if you've watched Best of the Worst, that was on one of the Christmas episodes a few years back.
I've probably seen it.
Yeah, if you've never seen the actual full short, though, there's so much in it that's not covered by Red Letter Media, so you need to watch it next Christmas time. It is one of the worst Christmas specials you will ever see.
All right, all right.
And that's coming from someone who's seen a lot of bad Christmas specials, including.
Oh yeah, totally. I love bad Christmas specials. Like, nothing's better than a bad Christmas special.
Yeah. All right. So,
anything else on Puppy Star Christmas? I feel like I'm missing something important that happened, or something really specifically funny.
You know what? You do know, by the way, that Kano is voiced by Diedrich Bader, right?
Yeah, I do. Diedrich Bader is, I don't know. On the one hand, he was a major character in Meet the Spartans, and it was really terrible. But on the other hand, he is a minor character in Office Space, and he will forever get a free pass from me for that role.
Not only that, but he was Rex Kwon Do in Napoleon Dynamite.
He was.
Yeah,
I like Diedrich Bader. I want to say I admired the art design of the North Pole, how it's like you've constantly got the Aurora Borealis shining down on it, and then the train, going there is
Polar Express.
The what?
The Polar Express.
Yeah, but a less stupid version. Like, it's got all the lights on it and stuff, and it looked really cool.
Yeah, the Polar Express, but without shitty songs. The
yeah,
songs in this are... Actually, there are shitty songs, but they're shitty songs that are at least satirical. I will give them credit for that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair.
And actually, that's one thing that definitely elevates Puppy Star Christmas beyond other movies we've seen, is that they attempt satire.
Yes,
that's in a kids movie that's aimed at the youngest, form of kids, because they've gone beyond Pup Star. It's Puppy Star now, so it's supposed to be even younger audiences that they're aiming for, and yet they attempt satire.
Yeah, this movie definitely had thought put into it. It's not like, let's just shit this movie out and make some money real quick on opening weekend. It's like, let's make a movie that people can kind of enjoy if they're of the right mindset, of the right age.
Yeah, and I think that's... People are going to give us some flack, I think, for propping up these movies as much as we do. But I challenge anyone to watch a handful of these Robert Vince directed, written movies and not immediately just realize that there's more to them than you might than other movies of similar ilk.
Well, plus it's also like, look, asshole, try watching Marmaduke and then watching Puppy Star Christmas and tell me that Puppy Star Christmas is not kind of enjoyable in retrospect.
Oh, by comparison, it's a fucking masterwork.
But I don't want to. I also don't want to like kind of downplay Robert Vince's level of thought. In these movies. Is like, he's making movies that he feels passionate about. Thomas Day was making money for whatever he does with his money.
Right, and that's the thing. Yeah, he has a passion for talking dog movies. There's no way that Brad Payton had passion for making a cats and dogs movie.
Right. You know what? They have made more movies than I have, so that's totally Robert Vince. Keep doing your thing, and I'll keep watching them.
Oh yeah. Well, I do. We what we need to do outside of Shituary / Sharch or whatever. We do need to watch the Most Valuable trilogy, the Primate trilogy, and make that a thing.
Most Valuable Primate and
most vertical Primate, and then Most Extreme Primate.
That doesn't start with a V.
I know. and then after that he put out Spymate, which is the Most Valuable Primate super spy movie.
I feel like Spymate is the absolute worst permutation of that title convention that you come up with. Like,
it's got Barry Bostwick as the president and Richard Kind as, quote, Dr. Farley. But Richard Kind is in this. That immediately ups the movie even more.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So throughout the entire, that was Sharch. We had giant monster movies. We had random movies off Netflix. We had Nicolas Cage movies, and we had talking dog movies. Do we have any major standouts or any really majorly painful ones? I feel like Talking Dogs had the biggest spread.
Yeah, it had the biggest spread, but it also had the biggest winners, and yeah,
That's what I mean. Yeah,
so you're right. The biggest winners and the biggest losers. Uh, I would say easily the worst movie of the year of the season for me is probably Marmaduke. Although
I agree.
more I think about it, I still fucking hated Boone the Bounty Hunter. That movie took it out of me.
I would say like Boone the Bounty Hunter was bad, but the practical stunts kind of elevated it above Marmaduke for me.
Yeah, you know what? There's slightly more effort put into that. So okay, I'll give Marmaduke the edge.
I would say that the people making Boone the Bounty Hunter had way more passion than the people writing Boone the Bounty Hunter, which might be the same group of people, but it's just splitting hairs.
Whoa.
I would agree. Marmaduke is the worst.
By the way, I would say the movie highlight was the secret good movie, Dog Eat Dog, but it just dawned on me. The best movies of this season were dog movies. Dog Eat Dog, huh?
Yeah. I would say Dog Eat Dog was one of the best.
Puppy Circus
was one of the best. I derived a great deal of enjoyment from Son of Aladdin.
Yeah, definitely. And Zandali,
and then Big Man Japan.
Oh yeah, well, Big Man Japan is also a secretly good movie. I think
it is. It's intended to be as stupid as it is.
Yes, and that finale when they just like drop the CG altogether and go full Ultraman, that hit me
amazing.
Yeah, that hit me really and that entire credit sequence where they're arguing over the dinner table.
I would say probably my favorite moment of the entire season was probably at the end of Big Man Japan, where who's the main hero guy?
I forget his name, but we'll just call him Big Man Japan.
No, the superhero guy.
Yeah,
the live action superhero dude, like Mr. Or Doctor or something. Anyway, he's like, I love my baby, and they set the baby down. He just like does a running fucking kickball kick into the monster and just blows him up.
And you never see the baby again, by the way.
Never see the baby again. That was probably my favorite moment of the entire thing. Not that I advocate kicking babies, but that was a really just ridiculoly stupid moment.
Can I just say I do if they deserve it? So the name of the character was Super Justice.
Yeah, Super Justice.
And then there was Super Justice's mother.
Yeah, they're all the connected characters are listed as their connection to Super Justice.
Yeah, Super Justice's baby, Super Justice's wife. Oh boy.
I would also say Corbin Nash was one of the worst of the bunch as well.
Yeah, I think we started off on a good foot because the movie I found. I was actually surprised with how much I enjoyed was, even though it's still a bad movie, but War of the Gargantuas, one thing it did right was it managed to keep up a good level of giant monster action throughout the film. And as much as I love Godzilla movies, the vast majority of the Godzilla movies from the Toho franchise spend 15 to 20 minutes maximum with giant monster fighting. And that War of the Gargantuas at least tripled that.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I think that's a good breakdown of this year's bad movie month. And maybe if the inspiration hits us, we might jump in and do a bad movie week or something here and there. But next year we'll figure out.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Next year we'll figure out a month to do for another bad movie month. But we occasionally will do a special here and there. I think.
I had gently suggested and this is in no way a hard set thing, but I had suggested doing a Seagull Timber.
Oh gosh,
Steven Seagal.
Whole September. Okay, I'm gonna say I'm
maybe 2 movies per week tops.
I'm for it, but if we do Seagal Timber, what I think would be the best thing to do would be to have the, just as a palate cleanser, the final week of Seagal-tember, we do a couple of actual, like, enjoyably bad Steven Seagal movies.
We had also talked about like kind of expanding the repertoire apart from movies and just being like, oh, let's talk about his documentaries. Let's talk about his work as a martial arts instructor or whatever.
Oh God, we could spend a week on his music.
And his music. So we got movies, martial arts training, music, and then something else that he did. Like I'm sure he does enough stuff that we could probably fill an entire month with Steven Seagal and not just do his shit ass movies that nobody likes to watch.
We could do an entire episode on his politics, because holy shit, I mean, the guy is so questionable.
I don't even know if he's worth talking about his politics, but maybe.
You know what? Let me just put it this way. As a palate cleanser, what we'll do, if we do go ahead with Seagal-tember, we do have to end it by watching Under Siege, just to remember when Steven Seagal was actually in a good movie that one time.
I agree.
All right, I think that's a deal. So we'll work on it, and if we don't do Seagal-tember this year, we will commit to doing it at some point in the future.
It's going to happen eventually.
What other weird, corny celebrities have a near rhyme that you could do for a month? We'll have to think about that. That's a takeaway.
I'm running through my head on which months can fit with the name Gary Busey.
Oh, Bucember.
Bucember, Multi-member.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Bucember might be the best for that.
Not that December is ever a valid time to marathon a shitload of movies.
Oh, although that said, Gary Busey does have Christmas movies, so
he does.
Oh my! All right, well, I've never seen Hider in the House, so that's a possibility.
Well, thanks for joining us for Sharch. It was a painful one.
Yeah.